Yo, I'm Kyle Brownlee from Soundblind Drums and the band Counterparts, and today I'm going to be giving you a little video walkthrough of my first drum sample library called Counterkit. Makes sense that it's called that, I guess. Counterkit is a contact-based drum sample library that is NKS ready and works in contact-free, so you don't have to buy anything else. Counterkit also comes with Slate Trigger 2 TCI files in case you want to use those. So when I was making Counterkit, I really wanted to just accommodate users who don't really have much mixing experience or as much experience with like drum software in general. And I wanted it to be easy to use for those users. Very straightforward, like plug and play, sounds good, load it up, and you're pretty much good to go. And I also wanted to have additional like tools inside of Counterkit that allow you to take advantage of more advanced kind of features for people who do have a bit more like drum knowledge and mixing experience. And I feel like Counterkit does a great job at covering both of those bases. All right, enough talking intro crap. I guess let's jump in and see what's going on with this thing. All right, so when you first open up Counterkit, you're just presented with a nice little visual image of my drum setup in a computer, which is crazy. Counterkit is a one kit configuration. There's no like swappable drum elements for this instrument. In future Soundblind drums libraries, there will be, but this is just like a one kit kind of configuration. So it is a Tama Star Classic Birch Bubinga drum kit with a Pearl Vinnie Paul maple signature 14x8 snare drum, and all of these cymbals are of course Zildjian cymbals. I guess left to right we have a set of 14-inch K-Suite hi-hats, 19-inch A Custom, 21-inch K Crash Ride Brilliant, a 20-inch A Custom, and a 19-inch A Ultra Hammered China. Counterkit also includes an additional ride cymbal. You don't have to swap it out. It's always active. It's just under a different MIDI key, which is kind of cool. And it is a Zildjian 21-inch Mega Bell ride. The ride sounds insane. It has a bit more definition to the ride tip and to the bell shank than the crash ride. So you can kind of bounce back and forth for whatever sounds better, whatever, you know, the context is for your song or your mix. So I really wanted to just kind of include that as a little bonus. So it's in there. So on the drum page, there's no real features on here. It's just a nice little visual representation of the kit. But you can click on each of the drum elements to hear a little sound preview for them. And on the snare drum, you can click on the rim for the rim shot articulation. And you can click on the center for the center articulation. So I'll just run through those real quick. You can access these on any page, but since it's more of a general thing, I'll just talk about it here. As with like every contact instrument, under the little preset window right up top up here, you can actually click this little drop down, and Counterkit comes with 13 different mix presets of just kind of toggles and stuff that have been changed in the plugin itself. You can jump through these and then customize them further if you want. So I'll just run through them right now. You have Kyle's Mix 2, aggressive parallel compression, big and roomy, tightly tuned, raw samples, which I'll get to in a bit, big drum room reverb, compressed and punchy, EQ boost, brighter mix, darker mix, saturated and scooped, and fat kit. So yeah, you can go through and check those out. I'll do a little demonstration of a few of them in a bit. So the next page over is the mix tab, and in here it's a mixer. You have a 10-channel mixer for all the elements of the kit. So just going from channels left to right. You have kick, snare, rack tom, floor tom, overheads, hats, the ride, stereo rooms, mono room, and hallway. You have the standard, solo button, mute button. You have a volume fader. You have a tune knob to adjust the tuning for the drum shells. Standard pan knob, make it go left or right. And then you have 2 reverb sends at the top of each channel. One is the room reverb, which is just a standard room reverb. You also have a drum verb, which is a plate style reverb. Very fast and easy way to address your reverb situation. Down here, you have a master output fader to increase the volume of the entire Counterkit instance, which is directly tied, as you can see, to the top right of the plugin with the overall volume of the Kontakt library. Down here, we have a multi-out option. I'm going to address multi-out later in the video. There might be a timestamp in the description or on the video in like a little chapter or something, but either way, if you are wanting to learn about multi-out and what that does, check out that section. For the next page, the controls page, I'm going to click on that. We've got 3 sections here. On the left, we have a mic blend section. On the middle, we have a CPU scaling section. And on the right, we got our room reverb and our drum reverb parameters over here. All right, so for your mic blend section, for the snare, you have snare top, snare bottom. And for the kick, you have a kick in, a kick out, and a kick sample. The kick sample is a one-shot sample that you can blend in with the actual samples of the kick in and kick out to reinforce and make the kick a bit more powerful. So just as a quick little demonstration, if we go to the mixer, we solo the snare and we play some MIDI. You can hear the snare. Turn up the snare bottom, more snare bottom. Pretty straightforward. The same goes for the kick mic blend. So if we go over, solo the kick and do the kick mic blend, I'm going to take all of these down. A lot of kick in there, kick out. And a bit more kick sample. The middle section is the CPU scaler, which is basically a bunch of toggles that allow you to turn the processing of the mix that's crafted inside of Kontakt either on or off for each specific channel. If you'd like to, turn off whatever mix processing I've done for the kick, you can do that there. The snare, rack tom, floor tom, whatever. These are independent. You can customize this however you'd like. And whenever these are turned off, it's going to reduce your CPU usage based on how much processing is being turned off. By turning all of these off, quick way to do this is just to go to the raw samples preset. That will actually instantly turn everything off, turn off the kick sample, and give you just the raw drums that were recorded at the studio. If you combine this with the multi-out toggle that I'm going to talk about later in the video, you can actually have the entire drum kit sample library raw without any of my processing. If you don't want it and you want to kind of customize and do your own, you can have those raw samples multi-out in your DAW. DAW? I don't know what people call it. I call it DAW. I don't know. But you can combine those and make your own drum mix however you'd like, using the combination of both of those features. On the right side of the controls panel, we have our reverb toggles, the room reverb and the drum reverb, which is a plate-based reverb. You can go through and adjust whatever parameters you'd like for each of these reverbs, allowing you to really kind of customize the depth of your drum mix based on, how dense or thin the other instruments are in the mix. These are dialed in pretty nicely right now, but I'm just going to mess with them just so you can see what's going on. So let's just turn up the volume. Change the size. Maybe I want the stereo image a little bit more narrow instead of completely pan left and right. Maybe I want the shell reverbs up a bit. Some of the presets in Counterkit have different, reverb customizations that really change the entire vibe of the drum kit. So check those out. All right, for the next page, we have mix bus effects. And this is kind of where shit gets cool. This is basically an entire drum bus mix chain built inside of Kontakt that has all of the samples of Counterkit running through it. You have numbers beside each of these little strips, which show the order of the plugin chain. On the left side over here, 1, 2, 3, these are all compressors. On the top right, you have a SSL style EQ. On the bottom right, you have 4 more additional little tools. So let's dive into just, I guess, what each one of these is, what they're modeled after. So for number 1, you have, this is just called mix bus compression, which is based off an SSL comp style compressor. You have your standard threshold, attack, release, ratio, makeup gain, and mix knob. So this can be used as a parallel compressor also. I like to use this one as just a full mix compressor. Each of these toggles, by the way, you can activate or bypass, which will also reduce CPU usage. Number 2, you have the Super GT tube saturator, which is made by Native Instruments. Has a very powerful tube saturation sound to it, which also includes a compressor. This is being used in parallel on some of these presets, but you can really go in and make some crazy sounds with this itself. You can actually adjust the level of saturation from mild, moderate, and hot. You can change the actual tonal character of this one by clicking this little drop-down box, and you've got fat, warm, and bright. And you can actually change how the entire saturation signal is being processed by clicking this, and you can do a stereo link, dual mono, or mid-side. And that's pretty powerful to change how much depth you want in your mix. So if you combine that with, some of the reverb toggles and stuff, you can really kind of customize the entire 3D kind of shape of the drum kit, which is cool. Below, you have a parallel compression, and this is based off an 1176 style compressor. Very aggressive, very fast. I'm using this mostly whenever I use this, at least, as a parallel compressor. Go in, change the input to really slam it if you'd like. You can adjust your attack, release, ratio, and your makeup gain. If you combine all these 3 and really kind of like stack them and hone them in, you can get some really cool compression going on. Up here, as I said before, it's an SSL style EQ boost. So you have 4 channels here of EQ. One is a low shelf, one is a low mid, one is a high mid, and the other is a high shelf. So you can kind of quickly carve the low end, the high end, and low mids and high mids to just like make the entire mix sit a bit more with your guitars, with your bass, whatever. Down here, you have a transient designer, and you can smash the input of this, you can lower the input of this, and then start to change the attack and sustain. And it really will start to make your drums either become super transient heavy or have a lot more kind of sustain to them. You can combine this with like the reverbs and the room mics and stuff to get really cool results. Some of the presets that are in Counterkit utilize the transient designer pretty nicely to come up with some cool sounds. Then next you have a tape saturator. It has a warmth option, kind of similar to what the character of this Super GT does. And then you have a stereo imaging knob, which really comes in handy for quickly adjusting how wide you want your drum kit. If you have it default to 0. That's just going to be the stereo image of the samples that are going into Counterkit. If you increase the spread, you're going to start to really widen the stereo image. And if you kind of decrease it, you're going to narrow it a bit more, which may help with having your guitars poke out a little more, and not clogging up, the far left and far right channels. So experiment with that. It's very cool. The final tab in the mix bus effects is drummer perspective. This is a just toggle knob where you just click it and it immediately flops your left channel and your right channel and just inverts them. And that way you can do a whole bunch of stuff. And if someone's like, the panning, I want it to be audience instead of drummer, or if you have like a video kind of element to it where, you're looking at the drum kit and the hi-hat is on the right side because you're looking at the drum kit, click a button. Now it matches up with the video. If you're doing just audio, keep it on drummer though. If you're doing just audio and you're an audience perspective panner, I don't know what to tell you. All right. The next page on Counterkit is the bleed mixer. So if we click the bleed mixer, you're presented with a bunch of knobs. You've got 4 strips that will allow you to independently control the levels of each of the elements of the drum kit in each set of ambient microphones. So if I go over to the mixer, let's say I solo the stereo rooms and I go back to the bleed mixer, I can start to adjust these elements of the stereo rooms and immediately hear an entire different mix of these stereo room microphones. So I think it's super powerful. And when you combine doing this for, the stereo rooms, mono room, hallway, and overheads, you can like drastically change and craft the depth and ambience of the entire drum kit. The next page is a MIDI Grooves tab. So this page is a page where you can preview MIDI grooves that come bundled with Counterkit. So Counterkit comes with my personal first MIDI groove drum pack. I also included 11 Counterparts songs, start to finish. So in here, you've got, this little file browser, and you can click and kind of explore what's going on. So, if you click Counterparts songs, you've got Nothing Left to Love, which has the drum MIDI for the entire record, and Eulogy for Those Still Here. You have Unwavering Vow included. And in the Kyle Brownlee drum grooves section, you've got a whole bunch of different beats. These are all blast beats. These are all D beats. You have a whole bunch of fills. Every MIDI groove is kind of bundled with a BPM at the beginning of it, so you know what it was written at, so you can use it at that tempo or adjust it. And then you have song structures. You have intro, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, and bridges for a death metal track, a hardcore track, a metalcore track, a rock, and like a techie, proggy kind of track. And then you've got 4 variations of each of those. So there's a lot to go through. If you aren't used to writing drums in MIDI, you can literally just kind of preview these MIDIs. So if I double click one, and click stop to stop it and say I want to use that, I can just now drag and drop with this little MIDI icon thing, and you'll see a little square appear in Contact over it. But in your DAW, I'm not going to import this tempo information right now, but you can literally drag the MIDI out of Counterkit into your DAW, and you can use it however you'd like. As soon as I open that up there, you can see the entire MIDI of what we just heard, and all of these MIDI grooves are kind of optimized for Counterkit's sample library. If you would like to import an entire Counterparts song, these MIDI files do contain tempo information and have the tempo changes and stuff. So I would just suggest opening a new session, and the first thing you do, drag in the MIDI file, import the tempo, and it's going to have all of those tempo changes properly in there. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, like we can go through some of these little fills. My tempo in my DAW is set at 205. If you don't want to mess with your tempo in your session, you can actually in Contact click this little thing up here, the little tab viewer, enable master, And over here, there's a nice little BPM counter. EXT means it's reading the BPM from the host, which is your Logic, Pro Tools, Cubase, whatever you're using. So if you turn that off, you can actually adjust the BPM that Counterkit's going to be reading in Kontakt itself, which is really cool. So if you, I don't know, if we want to run through some of these at 135 for the 135 tempo, we just type in 135, double click, and click next. And that's how you can preview what's going on very quickly and just adjust the BPM. You can adjust the BPM to anything. So even if this says like 135 or 205 or whatever it says, listen to it at a lower tempo and a higher tempo. You may find that you like them at your own tempo that you pick instead of the ones that I made them at. These are just kind of a baseline speed, but I would suggest kind of honing them in a little bit for whatever works for you. All right, for the final tab in Counterkit, we have the MIDI Remap button. You can go through and look at all the articulations for, you know, snare, all the different hi-hat articulations, chokes on the crashes in China, and you can adjust the MIDI key. And if you have like a MIDI keyboard or you have some kind of like, I don't know, like hardware kind of drum sampler, you can click the MIDI Learn button. You can hit something that will trigger a MIDI note, and it will immediately change to whatever you're trying to map it to, which is kind of cool. And you can do this with, you know, multiple things at once if you'd like. And down here, there is a little tab called Select Drum MIDI Remap Preset. Down here, you can click this little drop down, and you're going to be presented with a bunch of different MIDI map templates. So if your MIDI is formatted in, you know, Superior Drummer 3 or Get Good Drums Invasion or Get Good P4 or Drum Forge or Easy Drummer, you can select this and it's going to automatically remap the majority of the notes to that specific MIDI format. And it's not going to be perfect because there's different articulations, there's different, you know, layouts for each of these samplers, but it gives you a really good starting point, and it should get you like 95% of the way there. So yeah, I feel like that's a huge time saver. You can also click the reset to default MIDI mapping, and it's going to immediately change your preset back to Counterkit. For the multi-out option, if you're a more advanced user, you can enable the multi-out option in the mix page by clicking the bottom right down here under master output. Immediately, Counterkit is going to start outputting all of these channels in sequential stereo channel order for Kontakt, meaning that your kick will be stereo 1, 2, snare would be stereo 3, 4, rack tom would be 5, 6, and it, you know, just goes on all the way down for these channels. Additionally, at the end, past hallway, you will have a extra multi-out channel for the kick sample to have that independently controllable to blend in with the kick signal. Yeah, so let's do this right now. So in your workstation, Logic, Pro Tools, whatever, make sure that when you load up Kontakt, the version of Kontakt that you're loading is actually the multi-out version of Kontakt. If you're loading the mono or stereo and you're trying to run multi-out, it's just not going to work. In Logic, this is all I use, so if you use a different workstation, you may have to look up how to route this yourself. Down here, there's a minus and a plus button. So I'm going to click these a million times and load up all of the outputs for Counterkit and all of the multi-out channels from Kontakt. By default, you may not have the routing configured for the actual Kontakt plugin itself. So if you need to do that, you can click this tab up here, the window tab, and then you can select the outputs menu. And now you're going to be presented with a whole bunch of outputs down here. And I have mine configured already, but you may need to click the plus button on your outputs, and you may need to configure this in Kontakt to make it look like this, where your outputs are just sequentially in order, straightforward, all stereo. Like I said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that goes all the way down. And then once you configure it that way, you can actually do a preset batch configuration, and you can save the output section, and you can have it just quickly loadable. So if you have, a different drum sampler with a different kind of configuration for multi-out, you can quickly bounce back and forth. So, and now when I play a demo of stuff, we can see that the entire mix is coming out in multi-out, which is really cool. And now you can really go through, and if you want, you can combine this with turning off the processing toggles, and you can have the entire raw sample library. I'm just going to actually do this really quick. We'll just enable the raw sample preset. Make sure that multi-out is still on, and we can play this. And now you have all of the raw samples from when they were actually being sampled, no processing inside of Kontakt, multi-out in your workstation, which is really cool. That's how you do it.